Well, good morning again, everyone. It's my honor and privilege to bring you the message for today. And I want to talk about the gospel reading that Steve just read for us. So, a newspaper reporter went to interview a successful entrepreneur. How did you do it? He asked. How did you make all that money? Well, I'm glad you asked, the entrepreneur replied. Actually, it's a really wonderful story. You see, when my wife and I were first married, when we started out, we had a roof over our heads, we had some food in the pantry, and we had 5 cents between us. I took that nickel, and I went down to the grocery store, and I bought an apple. I brought the apple home, I shined it up, and I sold it for 10 cents. Well, what did you do then? The reporter asked. Well, he said, I bought 2 more apples, and I shined them up and sold them for 20 cents. The reporter thought this would make a great, human interest story and success story. Well, what then? The reporter asked excitedly. Well, then, my father-in-law died and left us $20 million, he said. Well, that guy prospered not because of his own ingenuity, but because he was connected, right? He was connected. Connected. Think about that word for a moment. Think about that word. What does it mean to be connected? Well, first of all, it means power, doesn't it? It means that we hear someone say, I've got connections, right? You ever heard that? I've got connections. It means I have access to power and maybe wealth and whatever. I can get it done, right? I can get it done. There's a humorous story about another successful businessman who was invited to deliver the commencement address to a particular school. He elected to speak on the subject, how to succeed. As he entered the door leading to the auditorium stage, he noticed the word push printed in bold letters on the outside. He thought that would be a really good theme for his speech. Push, and keep pushing. You got to push forward, right? He thought that would be really good. Well, when he hit the high point of his speech, he said, I can sum up my message in one word. And then he pointed to the door, and the students began to laugh. Puzzled, the speaker looked at the door, and printed on the inside was not the word push, but the word pull. That's how many people succeed, not because of their push, but because of their pull, because they're connected to someone who's powerful, someone who's greater. How often have we heard someone said, it's not what you know, it's... Exactly. Julius Little of Greenville, North Carolina, was hospitalized with congestive heart failure. The doctor warned him that his recovery would be slow. Now, his daughter Judy, who lived in another town, told him not to worry. She said, everybody in my church is praying for you, right? We've done that here at Grace, prayed for other people. But anyway, she said, everybody in my church is praying for you. Still, he said he was fearful. In a matter of days, though, he began to rally. In fact, in practically no time at all, he felt like himself again. Even the doctors were amazed at his progress. And the doctor saw no reason why Julius and his wife LaRue couldn't go through with their travel plans to visit Opryland in Nashville, Tennessee, on their way to visit Judy, their daughter, who lived in Blue Springs, Missouri. And so they made their way to Opryland. It was a hot and crowded day in the theme park, so LaRue rested on a shady bench while Julius went to find them a cold drink. LaRue struck up a conversation with 2 very friendly ladies sitting beside her on the bench. They couldn't believe it when LaRue told them that she and her husband were on their way to Blue Springs, Missouri, to visit their daughter. Well, I'm from Blue Springs, one of the women said. What's your daughter's name? Julius walked up just as this friendly woman said that she was a member of Judy's prayer chain. Then she exclaimed to Julius, I've been praying for you. I thought you were really sick. What in the world are you doing standing here? And Julius smiled kind of sheepishly, and he said, I'm standing here because of you and your prayers and your prayer team. Julius, you see, was convinced that he was standing there because he was connected. He was connected. He was connected to the ultimate source of power and healing through Judy's prayer team. Well, that's the first thing we mean when we say that we are connected. We have a power, right? We have a power. To be connected also means that we have a presence, okay? We have a presence in our lives. We are not alone. Someone shares our life. Someone is there for us. Is there anyone sadder than the person who is not connected to somebody? Consider the alleged Unabomber as an obviously intelligent man who reportedly committed bizarre and cruel acts. And can we help but deduce that part of his problem was that he cut himself off from his family and colleagues and friends? There is something about isolation that does something to the human spirit, whether that isolation is chosen or whether it's caused by circumstances beyond our control. And I know a lot of you have been through that experience of being cut off from someone that you love, either by death or divorce, perhaps. There is nothing more devastating. There's no more devastating experience in life. The loneliness and the sense of isolation can be overwhelming. But there can be all kinds of experiences that can cause us to feel disconnected. Sometimes having your children grow up and leave home, move away. I understand there is a luncheon group of older mothers in New York. They call themselves the "It Wouldn't Hurt You to Call Me Once in a While" club. Sounds like an interesting club to be a part of. Paul Turnier tells a story about a lonely lady he once knew who turned on the radio every night just to hear an announcer with a friendly voice say, "We bid you a very good evening." She felt that was the only person that really cared about her, was the radio announcer. There is a program at the University of Florida in which veterinary students staff a hotline to help grieving pet owners cope with the death of their precious animal friends. The students receive a specialized training to learn how to counsel and assist callers experience those painful emotions. There is a tremendous need for such a service, says faculty member Thomas Lane, who spearheaded the project. He said, growing numbers of single and elderly people rely on pets for companionship, feeling the death of a pet as strongly as that of a family member or a friend. Now, if you don't think people can ever grieve over the loss of a pet, then you have never had a pet. Isolation is a terrible, terrible way to live. Tim Kimmel, in his book Little House on the Freeway, tells about his mother who died of cancer. From the time the doctors discovered it until the time it took her life away was only 5 months. Her decline was swift and unstoppable. Surgery, radiation, chemotherapy had no effect on it. And it was difficult for the family to watch her die. Tim and his younger brother flew 2,000 miles to see her 3 times during the 5 months that she was sick. During the last month, Tim called every morning to see how she made it through the night, and every night to see how she made it through the day. Tim's father stayed with his beloved wife every day. Tim's 3 older brothers and sister all lived in the area. They stopped by regularly, daily, to be with her. Shortly before Tim's mom died, a wealthy, influential man who lived in that small community was admitted to the intensive care unit for observation. On the 3rd night of his stay in the hospital, he had a discussion with the nurse who was caring for him. Tim called the unit shortly after she finished working with this wealthy gentleman, and she couldn't help but relay their conversation to Tim. This young nurse was a committed Christian, and she knew of Tim's family's love for Christ and of his mother's quiet but compelling testimony. She told him that the man she talked with was one of the most powerful men in the community. He wielded great influence even at the hospital. Yet he had laid in the hospital for 3 days without a single visitor. He had a wife and he had children, but none of them came by. As she was giving him his medicine, he inquired about the patient in the private room. "Oh, that's Mrs. Kimmel," the nurse replied. Well, he wanted to know about her, and he wanted to know about Tim's father and his brothers and sister. Well, she told him all about them and mentioned that her 2 sons were out of town and flew back to see her several times and called daily to check on her status. He asked about Tim's mom's condition. "Mrs. Kimmel will die any day," the nurse told him. "If she lives a week, we'll all be surprised." Well, at that point, this man of influence dropped his head back onto his pillow and got real quiet. Just before she walked away, he looked up at her with tears in his eyes. "You know," he said in a husky voice, "I would gladly trade places with Mrs. Kimmel and die a week from now, if for that week I could have a spouse and children who cared enough about me not to make me die alone." We all have a need to be connected. We need to know that there are people who care about us. We need to know that we are not alone. Of course, this is where our faith comes in a powerful, powerful way. Our faith tells us that we are not alone, that we are never alone, no matter how isolated our situation seems to be. Columnist Sheila Graham had a compelling interview with Ruby Bridges Hall some time back. Now, maybe that name doesn't strike a bell. It will for some of you when I describe what Ruby went through as a child. Ruby looked like a typical first grader with a big bow in her hair and lunchbox in her hand. She climbed the steps of William Frantz Elementary School for the first day of school. But little else was typical about that day back in November 1960. Though she wasn't aware of it, Ruby had been chosen to be the first African-American child to integrate this particular New Orleans grade school. Every day on her way to school, escorted by armed federal marshals, she braved angry whites shouting at her as she entered an empty classroom. White parents had removed their children to other schools. And Ruby did not realize it until later when a little boy told her why he couldn't play with her, that she was the reason for all the commotion. In her interview, Sheila Graham noted that even in this stressful situation of having mobs scream at her, little Ruby prayed every day before and after school, and she prayed for those verbally abusing her. Mary Bridges Hall explained it this way: "One thing my mother always said to me was that when she couldn't be with me, if I was ever afraid, I should say my prayers. Every night, if I would wake up from a nightmare and want to go get into her room, she would immediately ask, 'Did you say your prayers?' That's where that came from, and it sort of stuck with me." Ruby's mother wanted her to know that no matter the situation, she was never alone. She was always connected. To be connected is to have power. It is to have an eternal presence in your life. And it is to know that someone cares about you. And one more thing, to be connected is to live a productive life. The reason many people fail to achieve great things in their lives is their lack of focus. They lack a driving sense of purpose. It's kind of like Willie Loman in Arthur Miller's play. They live their lives not really knowing who they are. And so they fail to make their mark in the world. If only they could be connected to one who could give them a sense of purpose, a sense of mission, and a sense of their place in the world. And of course, that is the good news. That is the good news for today. We are connected, you see. We are connected to the one who can give us the power, to the one who can give us the presence, to the one who can help us lead productive lives. This is what Jesus said it. It's very clear. I am the vine, and you are the branches. Those who abide in me and I in them bear much fruit, because apart from me you can do nothing. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, ask for whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. See, here's the great secret to life. Here is the secret of having real pull, so to speak, in the things that matter most. It is to be connected. Connected to the one who is the ultimate source of power, to the one who will never forsake us or leave us, to the one who will help us live productive and meaningful lives. You know, vineyard owners tell us that the strongest point on any vine is the place where the vine branches are joined together. The vine and the branch are joined together. Now, if you pull a branch that goes to a tree, it will always break at the trunk of the tree. In a tree, that's the weakest point. But in a grapevine, that is the strongest point, where they're connected together. Now, that shouldn't surprise us, because Christ says, I have the strength to provide all you need. I have the strength to hold you in the time of testing. I will never let you go. You see, when we are joined to Christ, we have a source of power. We have presence and purpose, and we can lead productive lives. When we are joined to Him, we can truly say, I've got it made. I've got clout, and I am connected. Thanks for watching. I hope this video can further the discussion of your relationship with Christ, either at home or maybe in the comments below.